Hello. So let's get started with jQuery. Now, from this video onwards, we will be working with jQuery. We have discussed about a lot of concepts and everything. Now we want to actually start with it. So before we start, I would discuss few basic points and then we will see our first example which you will be trying out. Now, purpose of jQuery is to make our page dynamic, right? Now, what exactly do we mean by making a page dynamic? This is a client side stuff, right? So that means some action should take place on the client itself or the page which is downloaded on your browser. Fine. Now we know why we are using jQuery is because doing the same thing with JavaScript is going to be more complicated. So jQuery is going to make it easy for us. So now what exactly jQuery does, if you get this point, it will be easier for you to use jQuery. Now consider that we have this particular page and we want to do something. Fine, that something, some interaction should happen. Fine, when we do something, something should happen. So what exactly that means is, first of all, we need to decide as a programmer that what we want to do. Let us say I want to click a button and some pop-up should take place. So your decision about the action that should happen or the action that you are going to take is click. The event that will be registered by the browser will be your click event. So that's called as an event in terms of our JavaScript and other things. So there are event handlers. So you decide on what event you want some action to take place. So the event that I want to take my action is on when I click the mouse button. Now, where should the mouse button be clicked? That's the other part. So on what your event should take place. It should not be random that you just click the mouse button and something should happen. Well, that is also possible, but we don't want that. So let us say we want to click on a button and then we want to update some section or we want to show a pop-up or something. So the basic concept is that you decide what is the resultant that you are looking for. Then when that action should take place, based on what event and what action we will associate it with that. So saying that, let's now proceed to see the example how this happens. So in jQuery, what we have is a concept of selector associated with the event and then based on the event take some action. Now the event may not necessarily be user input, but it could be something like a page loads, your page has loaded or something in the background happened and all that we'll be seeing later on. But initially we will be talking about the events that with which the user is going to interact. So the user interaction is usually with mouse. Fine, your mouse is clicked on the page, the mouse goes over something on the page and so on, then input from the keyboard, you're using forms and all. Now before getting into all those details, let's have a look at this. So how we do this is, first of all, obviously you have your regular HTML page in which I have called my jQuery script as usual. This is important, this should be called and we have to make sure that this is getting attached over here. In my case, this jQuery file is available in the same location where my jQuery stuff is. Fine, where I'm saving this file. Okay, let's also put a title over here, intro. Fine. Now here I have put some style to my div element over here which I'm using so that my page looks a bit better. Otherwise usual black and white, it does not makes it look very interesting. Okay, now assuming that you already understand HTML, here is our body part. In the body part we have our HTML where I have a h1 which just simply displays some message and there is a button. Now let's try to understand what we want to do is, I want to show a pop-up with some message to the user. Now when that pop-up should get displayed is when I click on this button. Fine. So the procedure with jQuery is going to be, first of all, declare the selector. Fine. Or we have to select this thing. So there is a selector, something called a selector, with which we can select this element, telling jQuery that okay, this is the element we have decided to work with. The next thing that we want to do is when some action should take place, or what action should take place with this selector. Fine. So the action that we want to take along with this selector is click. So basically when someone clicks on the button, I want to do some action. And finally, what is the action? It's a simple JavaScript pop-up. Okay, so this I have decided. Now I know this. So here, the next part is where I will write my jQuery script. This I had discussed that we would prefer to write most of our jQuery code inside this until unless there are some other reasons to do that. Here, let's start with this. So this part you will keep it as it is, and there we will write our code. Fine. So the way to point out any element or any selector, there are multiple ways which I will discuss later on. But the straightforward way to specify an element of HTML is by saying dollar, put this in brackets, in quotes, specify the name of the element, button. So this simply straightforward means that I am talking about button. Now one point to understand is, if there are multiple buttons, the action which you are deciding can happen with any of the buttons. So in the further sessions we will see how to pinpoint to exactly one specific element also, because there could be multiple buttons, there could be multiple paragraphs and so on. So here I have said that my selector is button. So at this button, what we will do is we want to associate something, the event. So the event that is associated is on click. So there were these older ones, directly you could have written click, but here I am going to use the newer ones. We will not use the deprecated ones with 3.7 onwards. So I will say click. So on click, I am directly saying button on click. As you read it, it is very clear. Now what you want to do is, when the click is done, we want to run something. So we will write our callback function over here, function on click. Fine. Now we could have done something else also. Fine. But for the timing, initial this thing, we will use our simple callback function. Here my callback function will be there. So generally we write it in a neater manner, which is like this. Fine. Here I will say this is a normal JavaScript alert. You can always use JavaScript. Hello, you have SUC. Okay, so this is what we want to show. Now let's open this. Now as I said, you could run this file directly, but my preference is that I'm going to run it through my server which I have set up over here. So let me just open that location. Here this example is already open. Let me reload this. Fine. You can verify whether it's the same code or not by viewing page source. Yes, it's the same code which we just wrote. Okay, this is very important. Sometimes what happens is we are writing the code in a different file and we are trying to run a different file and things happen. So reload the page. Here I am going to reload this page. Make sure you have reloaded it. Now here when I click on this, fine. So we have associated it with button. See, if I click anywhere else, it's not going to work. So when I click on the button, fine, the action takes place on the selector. I did my action, event took place, and then over here our pop-up comes, and that is how our jQuery is working over here. So let's reiterate it once again. I decided on an event which is click, that I want to click. Where I want to click is the button. So first I associated it with the button. Then I said on click and I defined my function over here. And what action should have happened was I wanted to display this particular message to the user. Fine. So over here, this simply does this. Now, can I click anywhere else and get the work done? Display the pop-up? Yes. So let us say you want to click on H1 and get the work done. So simply replace this with H1. Save the file. Let's go back to our example. Let's reload it now. Fine. Now when I click on this, nothing happens. But when I click on H1, the pop-up comes up. Fine. So it is so simple that you simply specify the selector, specify the action or the event, associate the event with it, and then finally decide the action, what should take place, and your action will give you the required result. Okay, so can we do something else apart from this? So let's remove this. Now here we have decided that when someone clicks on the button, this is our selector where we want to click, and there is a function that we want to run. Now we want to do something else. Let's say we want to hide this H1 when someone clicks on the button. So now here I will write other piece of code. So what you want to hide? So first let's specify that we want to hide H1. Fine. And then what you want to do is hide. So hide is a simple functionality available called as an effect. Fine. Here I am going to specify some time, that is 2 seconds, for it to hide. And now my code is updated that when I click on the button, instead of pop-up, we are going to hide this. Fine. Of course, we will not be able to unhide it unless you reload it. So now when I click on this, now you can see that H2 is hidden. Fine. Or sorry, that heading is hidden. Fine. Now you need to reload this page and you can try that again. Okay. So that is the simple example over here, how and what we are doing. Okay. Selector event. Fine. And then the action is decided. Fine. Here also there is a selector and the action. This is also possible, but this is the action part. So here we are not talking about any further event happening. This is the action that takes place. So that's the first introductory example with our jQuery. Next, we will continue with different examples and other things to understand different parts that are available in jQuery.